Hello, my name is Sam Mitchell, and I did my project on marijuana and whether or not it should be federally legal and why it should be federally legal at that. Um, I just kind of wanted to start off by talking about why I chose to do the topic that I did, why I chose to do a research paper on why marijuana, why it should be legalized today. I personally think that in today's society, the deviance and the crime that we're seeing, a big part of that over the last 80 years actually has been related to marijuana crime specifically. People being, arrested, people being charged with these illicit crimes for marijuana use or marijuana distribution and so forth. Um, I just thought it was actually a really interesting topic, something that maybe somebody had done before, but maybe I could give a different perspective or flip on. So I was actually happy to do the research on it. It was really easy to find information. It was easy to find the articles about everything that I needed to do research on. Kind of overall, my gist of looking at the effects of marijuana on society today. So I guess I'll kind of start talking about some of my findings now. So just overall, like marijuana is today a psychoactive drug that's widely known. It has many applications. Obviously, a lot of people will associate some of those applications with bad things, but there are definitely a lot of good uses rather than negative uses out there. I would say that the growing support for federalization continues to expand each and every day, which makes this maybe an even more relevant topic than I had mentioned before. One big thing that I think is that marijuana is actually a safer psychoactive drug compared to alcohol and nicotine, both short and long term, and a lot of people don't really look at those effects. However, as marijuana has now been around for much longer, those are now things that are being more actively studied, and I think that we're going to see that here in the future. Um, Kind of just overall, the thing that I was looking at with marijuana was the fact that it was mislabeled, as a drug back when it was originally made illegal. I kind of get into talking about the labeling theory and how it played a huge role in why marijuana is currently illegal today. And it actually reveals that marijuana shouldn't be, in fact, be a legal drug. And one of the things that I found really fascinating in my research was actually finding out that marijuana was, in fact, legal at one point before it was made illegal. I actually didn't realize how short and in terms it had been since it had became illegal. It was something that I thought was actually like way back in the day, something that happened, from the dawn of time, that they just knew that marijuana was going to be something that was an illicit drug. But it was actually in 1937, when they actually passed that law that made marijuana completely illegal. Since that 1937 law change, there have been hundreds and hundreds of thousands of arrests in the case of, marijuana misuse or marijuana use in general. A fun fact that I learned, not really a fun fact, but just an interesting fact that I learned, was that the lawmakers at the time, had a huge play in that decision of whether or not marijuana should be legalized or whether it should not be. And that decision was actually made a lot by the race wars going on at the time, what was going on in society at the time. A lot of people were looking at this new upcoming drug. It was being used in a new way, not for its previous applications of, medical use, but people were using it, to get high, if you would. And, that was really frowned upon by a lot of people, but it was more because that was how it was portrayed in the media, how it was portrayed, I guess in newspapers back then, how any kind of outlets were talking about it. It was in a negative term. In response, obviously, that it was made an illicit drug. It was, a criminal act at that point. One big statistic, though, during this time is that Black Americans were almost 4 times more likely to be arrested than whites, despite similar usage. So that just kind of points more towards the fact that it was more of a race thing. It wasn't necessarily that marijuana was a bad drug or that people were having bad experiences or people were getting hurt or, it wasn't safe or anything like that. It was more just so that, the society at the time didn't agree with it. It was more that there was a big race war going on, and they were really leaning towards arresting people that, were of color. And unfortunately, it's kind of stuck. Here we are, 2022. There are a lot of places, a lot of states that you can smoke recreationally, but we're still not at the point where marijuana is back to being federally legal, to where it's, anybody can do what they would like with it. Now, in response to that, alcohol is obviously a very legal beverage. People drink alcohol all the time. Alcohol is not something that is safe. It is not something that is, healthy for your body. There are a lot of studies and research that go towards that. There are also many deaths caused per year that are, directly caused by alcohol use, misuse, people, getting in the car and driving. The statistics for marijuana usage and deaths doesn't really exist. There aren't really that many deaths, or even deaths at all, that are directly derived from marijuana use. But at one point they did try to make alcohol illegal. They said, hey, we're gonna change the law on this. It was an alcohol prohibition. And it only lasted 13 years before it was overturned. Now, they tried to take alcohol away, and within 13 years, they had brought it back because there were so many people that were just having organized crime. There was government waste. There was increased use of alcohol, like illicit use of alcohol. And as of that, they pushed it to being back legal again. And it's kind of sad to see that. Today we live in a world that's been deeply affected by that. There are millions of lives that have probably been affected by the use of alcohol. And it's a pretty interesting fact. Now, kind of getting more back into how marijuana usage kind of benefits. There's a lot of money that could be earned from taxation of marijuana. It could be used to fund research. It could be used to fund education, the prevention of substance abuse. The money could also help benefit the economy, the medical field, and it would overall benefit the criminal justice system. Now, the biggest part about it affecting the criminal justice system is there is a lot of arrests that are made per year. And those arrests per year are taking up a lot of time, a lot of our officers' time. And, a lot of the arrests are just kind of a little bit of BS. So the officers kind of target these people for, illicit drug use, when it's something that is widely accepted now. The overall effects of marijuana, even with the research that have been done today, it's shown that it's such a safer drug to use than any of the other, gateway drugs or substances that are at its same level. Now, getting into the labeling perspective and how it was mislabeled, the labeling perspective in general is that those in power are creating the laws. Those people that at that moment in time that were in power created this law, and unfortunately it wasn't the right decision for the future. Marijuana has a lot of medical benefits. I think people are noticing that today. That's why as of 2022, we have multiple states that are fully recreational. We have states that are medical. We have states that are, a little bit of both. We have states that aren't anything at all. But we are getting to the point where we're going to see more and more states, and eventually we're going to see it federally legalized, which I think will be the most beneficial thing for everybody, as it's not something that really has any negative effects, other than maybe people overeating or, misusing it. But it's a psychoactive drug that is, just like alcohol, nicotine, various pain medicines, but it's just so negatively viewed on society because of how it was labeled. And my research paper kind of goes really into depth in talking about that and how it was mislabeled and why we should be looking at the positive effects rather than negative effects. So that's pretty much it. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful night.